designer, and I come through a whole bunch of histories, but particularly work with those big fuzzy things called humans. And of course, in the context of blockchain, if we're talking upstream and downstream, wow, they're downstream. From what we've been talking about today and what we begin to, people like me trying to help them move to processes, practices that might make any sense of what we're talking about today. You do need designers in the mix, because at the moment, their only memory is Bitcoin. That's the only thing they've got to go on. They've got 2017 where they saw corruption and piracy on also black markets. So you're going to have to give them better stories and values to which we can take from today and move it downstream. And that's what designers tried to do. So whatever you see now, prepare yourself. I practically failed maths, so I'm going to show you things. Just credit to the team, because the centre does work with social scientists along with computer scientists to make sure we make sense. And just to set the scene, I think, in terms of the implication of what we're talking about, is that social scientists don't talk about ideologies anymore. We don't talk about pushing ideologies or even surfacing or visiting ideologies, particularly economic ideologies. They talk about imaginaries. And a couple of quotes, and to put this into context, is that this is what I think we're starting to see. All the developers, all the people who've now moved from blockchain into open banking, PSD2, the people who came out of the woodwork because of the hype and the bubble are now really starting to design very, very different systems. And they're beginning to untap and offer different imaginaries. So an imaginary could be seen as a creative, symbolic dimension of the social world, the dimension through which human beings, you, create the ways of living together and the ways of representing collective life. So some social scientists say, how did you get here today? Did you get the bus? Who got a helicopter? Who got a private jet? Most of us got taxis, probably, maybe buses, trains. I had to fly down. We do things because of our imaginaries, the way that we've constructed the world. Now, economically, we've had dominant systems, centralized dominant systems, so we're not seeing novel things emerge. We're just beginning to. So the patterned convocations of the social whole, deep-seated modes of understanding, provide largely pre-reflexive parameters with which people imagine their social existence. So it means that the world out there, have you done much to get upstream to downstream? Because downstream, people still use specific codes, certain categories, a whole bunch of very incredibly normal things to get the day done. In terms of the jobs to be done thesis, people just want to get through the day, get their coffee, get home, look after the kids. That's their job to be done. So you have to find ways to get what your work is doing, theoretically, down to inform the jobs to be done. Because people's imaginaries, which are constructed through sense and meaning making, getting on the bus, just getting to work, getting the kids out, getting in the car, whatever, paying the bills. Those are the things on the left that they then balance out with when they can do it legally, illegally, in the structures that they're given. And at the bottom, somewhere, we're going to ask you, has any of that structured work, the context of how people then pay, how to get by through blockchain, made anything compatible? Anything that talks about how things change for ordinary people. So that's what designers do. And particularly in the context of a 20th century, which has given them centralized imaginaries. My parents are 75. They still think state holds trust. And they do. They were 40s kids. They came out and they have every possible imaginary that connects to state. This room is probably relatively rare on planet Earth. Everything in this room, everything has gone through some centralized checking purpose. Everything. I mean, you can't walk on a tile without it going through some centralized trust-building check. There aren't many rooms on this planet that are like this, if you put it at scale. So whenever we talk about DLTs and blockchains, we do have to remind a very small minority in the UK, in the West and the global North, that actually the proposition for DLT might not be in this room. Because whenever you walk out this room, you trust everything. Not everyone has that privilege. So we ask a second question because of these provocations, that if you change the representation of value, which we think data does, data is a fundamental change in the representation of value. Whether it's machined through a blockchain or it's through a standard database, it changes the representation of value because people are moving away from money being the primary representation. If you do change the representation, can you change the values that you can represent? So that's the background thesis. I'll get into the fun stuff now. But it asks us questions that if I had a £1 in my pocket and it has no memory whatsoever of where it's been, and I'm a vegetarian, then I don't know where it's been, and I can't encode it with values to where it should go. If I used a crypto, could I have a vegetarian coin and qualify where it's been and guarantee it will only go toward the spaces that I value? So values associating to value are a critical term for designers, particularly in the environmental movement. How do we reconcile values in the face of a highly fluid fiat currency? So off the tough stuff, onto what we do then as designers. We do two types of things, products if you like, workshops and prototypes, specifically for blockchain. And it grew out of, and I'm going to scamper through these. The first one is helping the publics, any publics, banks, civics, we do it with councils, research councils, but also local councils, helping them to rethink what their imaginary of the world might be if they move from this really overused slide. Because again, everyone outside of this room still has a very basic imaginary in which the NHS will always be there, and the road will always be there, and the traffic light will always be there, and they're not involved in any attesting. I mean, really, if we have to start attesting this room, your work changes instantly. So we run, we show them things like, this is 2015. You don't see many of these, and you don't see many visualizations of the blockchain, as it were, manifest through Bitcoin, in which you begin to tell them people about the blocks. You don't see these, because visualizations of the blockchain are really hard to find. So helping people understand real-time transactions way before the spike really helps people. We use simple narratives, and forgive me if I misrepresent Bitcoin, but we do like to help people understand that they probably won't bend down to pick 5p if they drop it in a busy train station. They're smaller than 1p's. Most people wouldn't bend down to pick up 20p. I don't know how much you would bend down. When you talk about dividing a Bitcoin in 1 million pieces and talk about that anything could have a wallet, suddenly ask questions about suddenly what could we begin to do? Whether it's right or wrong with the technology, it begins to ask them questions. So we help them move through this is a very simple technique we use with Lego that helps them build essentially 3 layers of a blockchain, so 3 blocks high. But what we critically try to do is help them attach values after we've gotten rid of sheep oil and things. So we begin to find that one of the big struggles of the 20th century for designers is that everyone thinks everything is a product. And actually, you don't want money. You don't want the products money can buy. You want the services that help you keep safe, walk the streets, look after the kids, education. And it's really hard when you talk about fiat currencies because they buy things. And really, designers want to design services. So we work with the teams, and and often we find they go on a journey through trying to value objects. And then very quickly, well, by the end, you begin to find that common funds, education are the things that matter for people. So representing values and then thinking how blockchain might associate values to value is one turn. After the work, I guess by 2016, PwC popped this up. They've taken it down subsequently, but it really helps other publics understand what any other distributed economic imagery might offer. Not necessarily blockchain, but where smart contracts come in all the way through to distributed autonomous societies. Of course, ID 2020, the UN project, tries to help the 500 million refugees. Again, you take it for granted you get a passport. 500 million refugees need some identification. So to help people figure that out, we do things such as body storming. Way back in 2015, we could afford Bitcoin, and we could afford to literally scatter it in the streets. So we associated, using Electrum at the time, we scattered Bitcoin according to GPS coordinates across Amsterdam, and we allow people to have a wallet, and they simply move through the streets. If their GPS coordinates aligned with a wallet, which was a GPS coordinate, money will be transferred. Very simple smart contract. More latterly, we've used Ethereum, because the Bitcoin cost a fortune, naturally. But people also, it was the year of Pokemon Go, so it was very, very easy to tie into people's imaginary of why are we running around a street. I've just entered a debt zone, and my balance is shot down. I can move down the street and aim for a green zone or one of the green tokens. And these help people because body storming is something that associates with sense and meaning making. So just what happens, so we pursue the model, and then as a workshop, and then people have a go. These 3 town planners, they felt, and this is flipping back to the Bitcoin model, they felt in an imaginary that they could give 200,000 euros in Amsterdam coin, capital, lock it into a crypto so no one can take it out, and then distribute it to the residents. The residents would then have their own fraction of the capital, and they would simply walk the streets and allocate where that capital funding goes. So literally, it's just participatory budgeting. So actually, you're not looking at currency. What you're looking is votes. And that's where, again, flip the representation of value, and you move away from selling money or repurposing money, and people are suddenly walking the streets, allocating their fraction of money to a school, to a playground, or if they press the Bitcoin button at the top, they get to choose bicycle stands. Everyone else sees it on their Google map, and they get to move around 200,000 euros of cryptocurrency. So the representation of value changes. Another group felt that one of our challenges is, in the global north, is that marriage is something for life, and actually contracts are probably not. Again, you bring certain ideologies and imaginaries to the table, which inhibit you to design. Another group just felt that simply, for me and Agalos to get a joint account today, there's so many barriers. I mean, really, so many regulatory, cultural barriers to two guys walking into HSBC getting a joint account. It's just not going to happen. And to close it really quickly as well. So in this instance, they span up, and I would have shown you the screen capture, but we didn't capture it. But they recoded geocoin to allow two people to walk into a pub. If their GPS coordinates are in the same space, that initiates a joint wallet. Straight away, it's born. The wallet is born, and we can spend from it, and in minutes, as soon as our GPS coordinates leave, the wallet is dissolved and never seen again. Dynamically, it suddenly changed the way through body storming how our participants began to rethink what you could do. And I suppose to finish off this little section, this is Tesco Bank employees. Even the banks don't really have the imagination because they're totalized. They're eclipsed by the assumption that value is only represented in fiat form. So these are three members, so you'll see another in a minute. They're walking the streets of Edinburgh to redesign a cinema ticket. So assuming the cinema tickets are really dumb still, all right? I mean, what you can get you can get old people and young people. You might get accessible tickets, but that's it. 4 types of tickets. So they began to reuse geocoin to replace the contracts, and we allow every participant to go into a login panel, move around the contracts, and redesign what we call an imaginary, which helps them get to brand new products. And you really take them on a journey because they're doing it physically. The last one came with the blockchain project, really, which is Pizza Block. These are all relatively analog, yet that one had digital with it. And these are from the decentralized design community in London. Pizza Block wants to understand what it's like to live in a less centralized governed society. As I say, you won't have to attest anything today. But what if you did? So in this instance, we suggest that there's awful pizza in Edinburgh, and a community of people who want to make better pizza, collaborate with any volunteers who want to make it better. They have to identify themselves as a self-sovereign entity, so they have their own CV, if you like. They work together, and they work with institutions to stamp, so the institutions have to take responsibility. All of the transactions are then placed into an open ledger, if you like, and people then can begin to attest and prove whether certain activity, I got a certificate for scooter driving, for example. You can attest that, and collectively take responsibility toward getting a better service. Now, it's really hard. It entirely bursts the bubble that life is easier in a distributed network. Because honestly, everyone's having to do twice as much work. You have to attest the University of Edinburgh to prove that you can get a certificate to ride on a scooter. I didn't want to do that. I just trusted Edinburgh. We're nice guys, right? But in a distributed, fragile governance network, you're going to have to work harder. So these things, again, ask people to make more challenges. So now I've changed colour. Now move on to the artifacts. So we do workshops, and we work with big brands to small brands. And this is time when we want to show you some of the products, because the artifacts help people think too. An early one from 2016 was the cash cups. We took 100 coffee cups through to Dutch Design Week in Eindhoven, and we added NFC tags to every single cup. And we gave every single cup a bank account, incredibly crude. And this is certainly not blockchain. But it allows every cup to have an account. That has got no credit on it. It's got a red ring. That one's got no credit on it at all. But if I put them together, they credit each other. This means that, and I can check the bank account now, so they've both been credited. I can see the numbers, and I can see they've gone green. I can then take the coffee cup over to the barista, and the barista can then, I can spend out now This time it will go green to red. And what we found is, of course, that actually the value proposition here isn't getting coffee, it's socializing. But that's why we have conferences, right? So we don't go to conferences for coffee. We use coffee as a mechanism to break the ice so that we talk to each other. That's entirely what happened out there. We added other value, though, because we're interested in the representation of value. Those coffee cups are very valuable. They're designed by Katie West. If you know Katie West, then they're collector's items. Some people stole from us. Other people, this guy here won't look you in the eye. He'll just make the best coffee. That's a 10-minute queue, and there's free coffee next door. Because the value proposition is not based on whether you want a better conference and quicker coffee. It's based on conversation. Pubs are no good if they're frictionless. They're full of friction. So trying to find out where the friction is in the system can actually maybe be the product. Because in the end, we're communal animals, and we probably want to hang around in groups and talk about the things that matter. So again, these ideas of how do we talk about any object in this room, having what the public might find equivalently to be a wallet or a bank account, because that's kind of the proposition. It may not be money, but they've certainly got databases. Most things have got a digital twin to some extent. Why do we talk about transactions? And these things help them. Okay, what we're also keen to do is stop humans owning all of the wallets. Our other hunch is if you really want to make a difference, stop giving money to humans, or include more people in giving money to. And it's a really grubby idea, but if you want to help society out there, give someone some money and see how they behave with it. They might not be able to behave with it fairly. So we started to do that with machines. So we bought a DeLonghi coffee machine, stuck a Raspberry Pi on it, and gave it a Bitcoin wallet. And we wanted to then put it in a social network to see what it would buy, informed by human activity. So this is Rory. He just wants a coffee. He's a developer. He just wants a coffee. So he's going to buy his coffee. It's going to indicate to him that it is on the internet, and it has the power to buy, and it's also part of the markets. But it also wants to ask him some questions. So it's going to ask him now, okay, Rory, I'm going to buy coffee next. Where do I buy it from? A social source, an ethical source, a great roast, and we won't worry about the ethics, or a great price. The scumbag picked price. And it'll come back and bite him. Because actually the group, after 2 weeks, went for 34% social responsibility. The machine counts that up, took a vote, and it will just then order the next set of coffee beans. So in some ways, how might machines offload some of the really hard ethical challenges we have because you give them a damn wallet? The EU Policy Lab were very keen to us to extend this to policymakers because they couldn't see the value of what you're doing. They just couldn't see how in the imaginary for politicians, how you are going to change any interaction. So they gave us energy as a problem, and we developed 3 prototype hairdryers. Gigless Plus is very basic. It has 3 buttons. The green one turns it on. The 2 black ones allow a student, for example, to stay up all night and trade energy. So he's going to buy energy at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's going to sell it back at 7 or 8 o'clock when you beautiful people need to do your hair. But what he's really doing is balancing the grid for you. So in the context of a distributed economy, we can't go on just waiting for all of us to have the energy between 7 in the morning and 10 at night. There's going to have to be a way of distributing the energy. So him balancing it and incentivizing him to stay up late and then getting free energy, completely free energy, because he's selling it, is one way of thinking about how the politicians understood a distributed system might involve people in centralized problems. The second one says that actually you and I aren't going to be up at 4 in the morning buying and selling energy. So we begin to introduce a bot. So here there's a bot. The bot has been encoded with the idea that you and I want eco-energy. In the end, on balance, we want eco-energy. So this goes off, and it finds and trades eco-energy, but it might take 2 minutes. So the question to you is, and you've all been used to every single button, I've got a few down here, just working instantly. You can't. In the same way there aren't enough rooms like this on the planet, you also can't expect to have energy instantly when you want it. So will you wait 2 minutes to blow dry your hair? So we're trying to ask a whole bunch of people, what might it like for a bot to intervene to reconcile your values with the value proposition? Get my hair dry now. The last one, we give up on you. We took all buttons away from humans. Buttons are really bad. And you're really good with them, but you just overuse them. So the last one simply says, look, we're a bot. We know we can scan the network and say there is not enough energy in the system for you to blow dry your hair. So we're going to take the button away, and we're simply going to offer you an entirely free hairdryer entirely free, but we're going to control when it comes on and off. So the bot takes completely control. You might have to wait a long time. You might have to get another message to say it's okay to, but the bot is going to control the proposition. Now the last one, I would do a live demo, but maybe I'll show you, and I can show you a live demo over lunch, because designers like live demos. You've seen them, Johnny Ive doing them, and all manner of people. But the last one is with Agalos and team, and look at conditional giving. So I'm going to play a really simple video now, which talks about what we're doing with Oxfam over in Australia now. This is an incredibly simple way of helping the public understand a smart contract. Jonathan has just put £1 in the disk, and he's pressed that button there, which initiates a 5-minute smart contract. If, in 5 minutes, there is an earthquake attested by the American Geological Society anywhere on the planet, that disk will turn, and the money will fall into the Oxfam piggy bank. Else, and if there isn't an earthquake in 5 minutes, then you'll get your money back. Incredibly simple, but really successful 2 festivals ago in Edinburgh, and everyone began to really enjoy it. Ironically, most publics put the money into the money box after they've thought about the implication of an earthquake happening. So buying time, but also introducing a smart contract, really changes the proposition of how at the moment Oxfam are asking for money. Remember, they're asking for money by hitting the table, Bob Geldof style, when there's been a tsunami. Too late. Way too late, or they ask you for a monthly fee. So all we do here is we have an Android and an iPhone app. They're running in Australia at the moment, and it simply allows me to design a contract. So I put £10 in the escrow, or $10 in the Australian escrow up there, and through the following slides, I'm simply designing a smart contract. I want it to be able to International Crisis Fund in Oxjam. I do want a validator. The attester will be the US Geological Survey. I'll decide on the magnitude of the earthquakes that kick off. I'll also decide on the continents. I'll make a total offer, which is, if in 5 days there are 10 earthquakes, then let's put a maximum of $4, which I think I've done there. And then I'll type, is it a gradual? Is it one-off? And in doing so, we're scaffolding the ability for the public to generally understand 2 things. Of course, they begin to understand if this, then that. But they also begin to understand about earthquakes. And over my 5 days, if I show you the limit, there are earthquakes all of the time. All of the time. The question is, how big are they to make a human impact? So just by closure, this is what designers want to know. They want to know the upstream to the downstream, and we're very interested in what is sedimentary meeting and what is compatible with their getting by in the day. Thanks very much. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, some questions for Chris. You had a question for me, right? Go on. That's really cool. Absolutely brilliant. I thought it's absolutely. Have you heard of a running website called Fetch Everyone?
No.
They have a similar game where you run about where you motivate people to run by trying to pick up stuff. So
cool. Fetch Everyone.
You've actually got Bitcoins for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm slightly worried that most of this doesn't need blockchain, to be honest, honestly. But you're right, it's the way of thinking which might involve running or playing or involving others. And that's where we had a block 5 years ago, genuinely had a block in design, because all the students want to design Dyson products or iPhones. And actually, we want to how do you get designers to design governance if you involve them on the street? Because it changes what we think about design then. But no, it's good. I'll check.
Social credit. I mean, Chinese social credit is doing the same thing.
Yeah, it is. Of course, and I'm no tech, but my inference from friends and colleagues is that, of course, if I walk toward a government scanner, face scanner in Hong Kong, the implication is I can't control my identity anymore. What we're trying to help the public do is understand the permissioning. So in the pizza block, it's as much about understanding how you become self-sovereign, not China scooping and owning and controlling, and about that negotiability. And that's really hard for the public to understand, especially in the UK, because they believe that state will do them well. And that doesn't always transfer. So the pizza block helps understand, well, what do you want to see? That I can ride a bike, I can make a veggie pizza, and we do that in very analog ways. But the ethical implication is, how do we help people move away from trust in just governments, rather like Agilos's point.
So thank you for your talk, and thank you for the human angle on this. So this follows on to the last question, which I think is perhaps more generalized. It's not just a very powerful country like China that dictates the terms of this, but even if we were to allow the fundamental decisions, for example, relating to the hairdryer or to the funding of people based upon their locations in markets, who would be in control?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
What do we need to do in order to make sure that society continues to function as we've enjoyed it, rather than just have the control be in the hands of whoever will?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, so interesting things have happened in the last 7 years. From the anarcho-capitalists, who really boosted the crypto through the ICOs, you began to see another movement emerging. So Faircoin, there's enough out there equivalent social stories in international development where people are starting to see it's not about managing the markets, it's about managing representation in the village. So I think with a different narrative, you'll find a host of communities who are concerned about whether blockchain is the solution, but they value the values that it's beginning to afford them as a discussion. So we've got a project in Govan Hill in Glasgow where a feminist cryptocurrency group are just trying to design this toward how they do feel disenfranchised and misrepresented. As a designer, I can't solve the tech governance challenge. All I can do is bring people to the table downstream with a game or a prototype or a pizza workshop that begins to engage in the system. I mean, I'll be honest, this isn't cascading down to school kids, what you're talking about. This isn't I mean, school kids is a wholly centralized proposition toward accreditation. If you've got a disenfranchised teenager who can't go through exams, they are fucked. So in every step down that upstream to downstream, I think it's a design problem. So I can't solve your answer, but I can try and own some methodologies that as a community we might begin to share. Yeah. 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 No, absolutely, and I would encourage people to think about how limited people are. We're very lucky in this room to even spend a day doing this. Most people haven't got the chance because many of the decisions or propositions they'll be given were based on basic economic needs. I need to get the kids through Christmas in a happy model. Now, that's way beyond, that's just sense and meaning making based on how much money have we got in the account this week, darling, and getting through. So then and those propositions have become thick and fast through open banking. We hunch that in the next couple of years, all of the banks, or there will be a comparethesupermarket.com, will look at you and make a proposition to say, if you give us your PSD2 open banking access, we'll find you a deal with a supermarket. If Asda say, hey, take an 18-month deal with Asda, and I'll say, wow, darling, we can get 20% off all our shopping from an 18-month contract with Asda. Wow, many families would sign up. But like those early days when we took contracts with our mobile phones, there was always someone getting a better offer because the personalization of the data and the offer isn't about a shared supermarket. It will be looking at a bank account and then making a digital offer. I have no explainability for that. And that will rupture society. Absolutely agree.
One more question. What narrative or what story have you found resonates when you do many of these case studies? You hear
That's good.
sovereignty, own your own data, get paid for your data, all these things. Do they resonate, or what have you
They do. They take self-sovereignty is quite a complex idea, actually, especially if you've just taken it for granted and if you're fighting over a blue and a red passport. I mean, we're dealing with some really basic societal challenges at the moment. But self-sovereign is interesting. Certainly we find smart contracting as an offer, and arguably if this then that always did smart contracting, if certain. But they do like to triangulate. They've found that they might, well, one story is they've been pushed digital products and they're pushed a feed, and suddenly triangulating that is asking them a question about testing. They're not sure they want to be the attester, but they're quite interesting, such in the Oxfam case that, okay, we trust Oxfam to deliver aspects of aid, but we're not sure if they're the right person to know about earthquakes. So asking the triangulation point is helping a public move from value which is just pushed along a line to being networked. But to be honest, this is me reading a participatory workshop, so I suspect the participants would say, no, Chris, we didn't get that. We just like not real money, or we like another thing. Okay, so it's a good point. It's a really good thermometer test, because I think we have seen a sea change in the imaginaries. Now, it's cascading up as much as it down, and it's because many of the programmers, I mean, he can keep them. I can't keep an Ethereum programmer in my group. I mean, they just go straight to London, £600 a day. So academically, I can't keep them to build the prototypes. But nevertheless, they're in the system, and they're very bright. So we had students, you'll probably have in 2017, you had students who should be doing their exams, and they were trading. They had windows open on their desktops where they were just trading. So something happened in that year which began to inform a whole generation of different people. My hunch is that they'll go to PSD2 and open banking first, and the fintech bubble, before they return to whether it needs blockchain or not. So our hunch is they're moving that way. My big dearth is in designers. Can't get UX designers to understand how you design a different wallet that doesn't look like my HSBC one. And that's my big vacuum. I can't get the coders, but he might be able to. Great.
Okay, so it's time for lunch and the poster sessions that are outside as well. And then we've got one more presentation for this session from Steve Schneider.